everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
If he were to pat you on the back, you would list it on your resume. When in Rome, they do as he does. His fortune cookies simply read, "Congratulations." He is the life of parties he has never attended. Cuba imports cigars from him. He is the most interesting man in the world.
How about that? We're back
I miss
here.
Those commercials. They're so well written. You know, those one-liners are just brilliant.
That's the best.
I know.
Best coast.
I want to know who says that line in your intro. You filthy criminal.
Oh, that's Adam West
as Batman.
Oh, is that right? Bless his heart. Adam West played my father in the New Age with Michael Tolkien, no less.
Yes.
Who wrote it? Wrote and directed.
How about that?
Adam West, you filthy criminal.
He's a good criminal. And we're back here and everything old is new again. Another week with Peter Weller. Listen, the idea is this. We're quarantined, but it doesn't mean we can't have some fun. We can't learn something. And I'm here with, of course, David Cohen, the best co-host in radio. How about that, David?
Oh, thank you, Doug. I appreciate that.
I'm in a good mood today. What can I tell you? Now, listen, Dr. Peter Weller has been involved in 70 films, TV shows. He's directing. He's a jazz musician. He's acting, of course. He's something beyond all of that as well, or in addition to that, he's a PhD in Renaissance art history from UCLA. We're going to involve ourselves in all of this and more on Everything Old is New Again. We know that these times that Dr. Weller is with us is some of the most listened to and greatest shows that we do. People enjoy it so much. Great response. And Dr. Weller, I'm going to ask you a little bit now about something that is going to be somewhat difficult to translate to the radio, but I think we're going to have a good time with it because we're searching for things to do. I would like to talk about movies more, which we will do after this for listeners, but right now I want to get into and dive into the idea that there are many virtual tours that you can investigate online while you're home. Now, I think this is a great opportunity to widen your horizons a little bit if you feel like it, and maybe even bring the kids or the family involved with, you don't have to travel to Italy right now to see some of this. You can wet your whistle with a little bit of what's online. So while I have the doctor on the line here to let us know and point us in the right direction, let me throw out to you a few museums at a time here that are available, and maybe pick one or two and then guide us, say that's a good one to spend some time with, and if you do, here's a highlight of that museum. Maybe that might be a good way to start. Now, believe it or not, the Vatican Museum, where you can get, of course, Michelangelo and Raphael and others, is available for virtual tours, as is the, and I'm going to butcher some of these, but the Villa Farnesca in the Secret Raphaels. Are you familiar with that, Dr. Weller?
Mm-hmm.
And or the Altar of Peace. You can take a look at the Altar of Peace. So there's three there. I don't know which you would pick and why, but maybe I guess it would be the Vatican. But you tell us, where should we tune in and what should we look for in some of these?
Is it the Vatican Museum or is it the entire Vatican?
The entire. Remember. It's the Vatican Museum, but they have the Sistine Chapel on there as well.
And Raffaello's Stanza Signature is open?
Yes.
Okay. So, the Vatican Museum, where people go to the Vatican to see the Sistine Chapel and the miracle of what Michelangelo did there. Sometimes they fail to look around the sides of those walls and look at, Perugino and Luca Signorelli and the Last Judgment, which Michelangelo did many years later. They had to remove a Botticelli there, and do that fresco. So the Vatican, if you did the museum, where you can start really at the beginning of the Renaissance and narrative painting with Giotto, you can walk your way all the way into past Raphael into Caravaggio. and I think Caravaggio's Redemption, a deposition is there. No, not deposition, entombment. And so you can leave that, then you can go into the Belvedere courtyard, and you can see this thing that I teach in high school sometimes called Michelangelo and the action movie. You can see the Laocoon. The Laocoon is this twisted guy in perfect physique, pretty hot dude, but his two sons being eaten by snakes, and he's the high priest of Troy, being cursed by essentially Poseidon for saying, beware of Greeks bearing gifts about the Trojan horse. That twisting, right, is a vestige of Pergamum, which is, I'm going to really bore you guys. Alexander goes around halfway around the world, leaves his money when he dies in Turkey, in a place called Pergamum. This place, Pergamum, begins the idea of twisting art, of torsion. Not just the ethic of classical Greece, but the pathos, not the ethos of like the Belvedere Apollo and all that, but the torsion of the discus thrower, all this starts in Pergamum. So Michelangelo sees that, man, and that you can go from there, you can go right into the Sistine Chapel and see where Michelangelo saw that being excavated. The Laocoon being excavated on the Esquiline Hill while he had started the Sistine Chapel, and saw that, and he saw the Belvedere, the torso, Belvedere torso. And he said, okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm twisting people in space. I'm holding action. I'm moving it. I'm holding it, man. People are, and you see the Sibyls are twisted. Jonah at the end of the Sistine Chapel is twisted. See, at the beginning of it, the judgment, the drunkenness of Noah, and the deluge and so forth, as he's trying to be a single point perspective artist. You get to the creation of Adam, right? There he is twisted. There's God twisting, flying through space. Everything Michelangelo does after that is a one-trick pony called action, right? Action movie comes right out of it. Baroque painting, you can go right into neo-expressionism, man. So that museum, taking you virtually through the Vatican, will give you a context for movies. That's all I got to tell you.
Now, along those lines, I know you have an 8-year-old. I've got an 8 and a 12. Maybe I'll throw this out to you. If you were to introduce your son to art, where would you start and at what age?
I would start with contemporary stuff. I started my kid when he was 3, and 2 of his friends, I think it was 3 or 4 maybe, because they're painting. And if you do contemporary stuff, I mean, my kid, I spend every Hanukkah, Christmas in Venice, and I have since 1990, and I will until I go to the dirt farm, man. I would start, and I got to take my kid to Peggy Guggenheim's museum, right? They wanted to go there, My kid looking, like being that tall and looking at like an altarpiece of Titian, he kind of was amazed at it, the largest altarpiece in the world in the Ferrari. We go to midnight mass there every year. But he didn't, he's just, yeah, big colors. Yeah, I get it. But you take him into the Peggy Guggenheim where the painting's on eye level. And the trick is you do I think it was Rembrandt that said actually walk into a space, if it's a museum space, pick the thing you like and look at it for 5 minutes, which no kid can do. But I would walk him and his 3 friends. I walked him and his 3 friends. I said, which one do you like, right? And they would go, everybody had their own little thing. They gave me 30 seconds. That one. Why? And I remember Teddy picked the Robert Delaunay, who was the guy who started circling colors. And he says, I like the circles, I like the colors. Another kid would pick, Mondrian for whatever, early Mondrian for colors. And so I would take contemporary art, man. You got to turn them into that because it mostly relates to, even though there's a genesis of contemporary art that goes back all the way to Giotto or beyond, what kids are painting, there's a genesis with them. It's in their head, their ideas, so that they get done. So they can relate to these abstract ideas faster than they can to absolute beauty of figurative art. Funny, they're trying to do figurative art, but they're doing contemporary, abstractism. So I would do that, man.
All right, and the Guggenheim is
and
also...
by the way,
yeah.
let me ask you this. Is there a virtual tour through MoMA? Is there a virtual tour through...
There is through the Guggenheim.
There is. I think MoMA as well.
Or the Guggenheim.
Yes.
MoMA's got a virtual tour?
I'm pretty sure I heard that on the news actually the other day that they offered one.
MoMA definitely has it, but it's limited, although they're expanding it. But Guggenheim, you can literally walk the halls and turn and take a look at this one, look at that one. The Uffizi in Florence, you could do the same. Some of them have it different ways.
By the way, that's another one about if you do the Uffizi. I take people through the Uffizi all the time. But I got to take them like, okay, this is where you walk into the first room, you get sort of like depth, space, dimension, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing, you get horizontal composition. You walk to the next thing, you get realism. You go to Botticelli, pagan art, profane art, and then you go all the way to Caravaggio. So that's another museum you should do.
I hate to do this, but we've got to take a break here for a moment. We'll be back with Dr. Peter Weller on Everything Old is New Again.
It's been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long time. My time is flying.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi, this is Bob Breyer, and we're Everything Old is New Again with David Cohen and Douglas Viviani.
We are back, and that's a gentleman that is quite a scholar in Egyptology and Egyptians, and created the first mummy, if you will, since the Egyptian times. Dr. Peter Weller, in a related question. Dr. Peter Weller, have you heard of something called the Great Courses? Just throwing it out there.
Oh, what is that?
The Great Courses is an organization where they have quite a number of courses in many topics. Of course, you could purchase, download, whatever. I went through, and I've taken probably 10 fine arts courses through this. They've got the Renaissance, they've got from Rome, they've got history, they've got all kinds of stuff. So if anybody's interested in that, Dr. William Klaas is one of them that speak of the Italian Renaissance and take us through this. It's a really great way also to introduce people into art. I had no interest in it whatsoever, or just a curiosity. I started watching some of these while I was working at the same time, and it grabbed my imagination, and I couldn't put it down. So it's, art sounds, you must hear this. Art sounds dry in some level and academic and cerebral, but it is that, but it's much more. And if you hear the definitions and the explanation of the history of what's going on with what you're watching and seeing on the walls, it adds another level to what you're enjoying, and the Great Courses provides that as well.
I've never heard of it, but I will definitely check it out. Also, there's a guy, I think he's on BBC PBS now, a guy, what's his name? My friend is always telling me about him. He actually makes art very available to everybody, and he's not pretentious, and it's really difficult to say, because art appreciation, art criticism, art history is the single, possibly most pretentious avenue of endeavor I've ever encountered. And it makes the movie business look like Mary Poppins, man. It makes like the entitlement of movie stars, look like nothing. So I would going to say an addendum is that a couple of times I had the great fortune to hang with David Bowie, and I had this kind of quick dinner with him and Iman. This has got to be 1992 or something like that, man. And he was talking about, like this room is full of celebrity, and he made this comment, that the celebrity had taken the place of the cultural elite of the courts, of Louis XIV, right? And once the sort of the modern era had been done with royalty, celebrity became it, right? And the pretensions of celebrity go on and on and on beyond, the court of Louis XIV. I now, as an art historian and a published one, I wish I could have that lunch with him, God bless him, again, because I would say beyond celebrity, the art world of art appreciation, art criticism, and art history is way beyond celebrity. And it's like Thomas Wolfe wrote that great book, The Painted Word. I don't know if you guys have read this. You ever read it?
No.
Yeah. The great social essay, The Right Stuff, Thomas Wolfe. You got to get this, guys, because he gives you a quick history of art criticism in the 20th century. And he mentions all the Bergs, the great ones. And one of them was my mentor, Leo Steinberg, Clement Greenberg, Harold Rosenberg, Sidney Freiberg. These are all the historians and critics of the post-war generation, right? But he said the funny thing about this thing that you're talking about, Douglas, about visual art, it is the one art form, and this is his quote, to which the public is not invited. Meaning that in a modern day, you can have Cats and it tanks critically, but people will go see it. You can have Dr. Zhivago, critics, after Lawrence of Arabia, this is garbage, made more money than David Lean, any movie David Lean ever made, man. People will go see poetry, they will go see music, whatever. Visual art on a wall, they will not go see or buy unless you have a aficionado, connoisseur, historian, or cultural elite tell you that you have to go. You have an Andy Warhol throwing Basquiat at a party. You think that tag artist doing that expressionistic voodoo stuff, on a wall, you think anybody would have bought that? I mean, not to take away from his gifts, but Andy Warhol did it, right? This goes on. You don't think that Hans Hoffman or Peggy Guggenheim putting up a Jackson Pollock or Lee Krasner? Lee Krasner is the first woman ever put in MoMA. Who knows Lee Krasner now? When you do a party for Pollock, right, and Pollock is like the guy. So we're not invited, man, unless you got the pretension. And by the way, I always like to, my friends go like, because I got 2 papers accepted to 2 different things this year. I tell all my buddies are all on Zoom, including Luke Henderson. Guys, I got 2 papers accepted to 2 conferences, 16th Century Society and Market Development Society. I'll be giving two, not 1, but 2 papers this year, and possibly publishing my dissertation as a book. So if you thought I was a cultural, pretentious, arrogant before, man, you think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine. So, this world of art is like just.
But we could peel that away with the great courses and listening to you and listening to Everything Old is New Again, because it isn't just for the masses, but it sometimes may need to be explained to us. But if we're interested in it, it's not beyond comprehension easily.
Well, but part of it is the way it is too. It's not. Art exists in a particular place, physical place. So if you're not living in a metropolitan area or near a metropolitan area that has a decent museum, most people don't get a chance to even see it, let alone living in a city where it's accessible.
You're right, David, but because one thing beyond that, the good news and the bad news is that, yes, if you're not accessible to it, you're not going to feel part of it. Now you can see it virtually and so forth, and you can buy books of it and so forth. But if you say you have access to it, say you have more money than Bruce Springsteen or something, who's a pretty nice guy. I don't want to use him but a lot of those guys won't go buy art if they're ready to start a collection until, a connoisseur. And by the way, there's no school that teaches connoisseurship anymore. I think maybe Princeton has forced in it. It's all now documents in history. But they won't buy the art. They won't go see the art until somebody of import tells them. It's not like King Tut's tomb. All of a sudden there's a Mark Rothko exhibition. I mean, who knew Mark Rothko until the postmodern age that said, okay, those squares are beyond Mondrian. Those are impressionistic cubes now. But the other thing that Douglas is saying is that all of it has a genesis, and all of it is connected. And when I started studying art, I started with, Picasso, and then I went back to the Impressionists, and I studied myself forward on my own. And you can go, it's there. You can go from Impressionism to Post-Impressionism. Okay, you got Post-Impressionism. It's not just how the light hits it, right? But it's also the shape of the thing. Okay, Cezanne says, hey, you want to take the shape? Let me edge it, because I've been watching Piero della Francesca, who has this great idea of mathematics back in the Renaissance, that faces shouldn't have an identity. They should just be cubes and circles and squares and parallelograms. And then you get to see the mathematics in the Renaissance. Mathematics is God. Why? Because God created nature, and all those mathematics exist in nature. That's what he wrote. Cezanne gets hold of that. He goes, Jay, Pierre had a great idea. I'm going to edge all these trees in different shades of green now. Then you can see the trees jump out. You can see the triangle of the cyclist and the thing. Okay, after that, you get cubism. Okay, let's take the whole image and make it pop. Or futurism in Italy, such as that, right? You get the image itself pop out. And then finally, Who cares about the image itself? What about just the shape? So you just start to get abstract out of that, right? Okay, Mondrian, who does it all, from figurative realism to impressionism, post-impressionism, cubism, says, heck with the shape. What about just the geometry? Like, we abstract the geometry out of it. We can see the beautiful thing about nature through this art. Now, I just explained that. Not my idea. You can read it, right? You can get it in 5 minutes. Two bankers sitting in the Grand Inventory smoking a cigar, looking at a Mondrian painting called Black that was on sale on view at Los Angeles County Museum. This was years ago. So can you explain that? So if you look closer, you see the brushstrokes go one way. Brushstrokes, so it's actually 4 squares in one big square. Yeah, so what's the meaning of that? I just told him what I told you. It comes out of figurative realism, to impressionism, post-impressionism, futurism, precisionism, cubism, abstract impressionism, shape impressionism, action painting. It's all connected, Douglas, to take your point. There's nobody that all of a sudden wakes up and goes, hey, I think I'll paint, a picture of Betty Boop upside down and call it art. They're looking at something, and they learned it somewhere, man.
Right, because everything old is new again.
Everything old is new again.
There you go. And we'll be back right after this with Peter Weller. Join us. This is Douglas Viviani of Everything Old is New Again, and I'm joined in London by David Soul, co-star of the legendary television series Starsky and Hutch. Not only has David managed a brilliant acting career, but the fact is he began as a folk singer, and since the mid-70s, he's recorded 5 albums, including such international hits as Don't Give Up on Us and Silver Lady. Hello, David. I understand you've got some great news for us.
Thanks, Douglas. And yes, I'm very pleased to be with you and your audience, albeit by phone, to announce the release of David Soul Gold, a 3-CD set of 44 songs I've compiled from 5 albums, and including 5 international hits. And for all you vinyl fans, we're also releasing a 14-track gold vinyl album that includes all the hits, some of my favorites, plus a brand new recording of the iconic 1976 U.S. #1 hit, Don't Give Up on Us. In these days of uncertainty and COVID-19, where so many of us feel isolated, remember that music is a friend and can help soothe some of the anxieties we may all feel. I'll tell you this, you will have a friend in David Soul Gold.
And there you have it. Everything Old is New Again. And this 3D set, the Gold Vinyl Album, and David Soul are back and better than ever. And you can order David Soul Gold CDs and album online at davidsoul.com. That's davidsoul.com or on Amazon. Thank you, David.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
This is Anson Mount, and you're listening to Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
How about that? Captain Pike himself from Star Trek Discovery joined us a little ways back. And by the way, we're here with David Cohen and Dr. Peter Weller. Dr. Weller, Anson Mount says you're a great guy. I had him on the show. That's the exact quote that I wanted to relay from one person to the other. I don't know if you had met him.
That?
Anson Mount. He had played, he was in Hell on Wheels. He was the star of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So he says hello, and anyway, just trying to impress you a little bit. What can I tell you? But
thank you, man.
Here we go. I'm going to take a little time here with Dr. Weller to go back to movies for a moment. I want to because that was sort of a Star Trek reference that we just had, and I want to see if we can pick 3 or 4 movies and see if there's any of these that speak to you and tell us why. And again, these are movies that people may have heard of but may have not seen, and maybe we'll give a little inspiration to actually watch a movie or two like this with your kids, with your family, or yourself during this time. And these are worthwhile, I would suggest, and therefore what we're suggesting. So I'll throw some out here. I know you like this one. We spoke about this one previously. The Day the Earth Stood Still. The original, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, and Planet of the Apes, 1968. I'm wondering if there's any of those that you'd like to suggest that people take a tune to.
Sci-fi, man.
Yep.
Okay, like I've been in some like sci-fi winners, like I guess you call sci-fi, and I'm not a sci-fi guy, man. And I never was attracted to sci-fi. I just haven't. I've seen all those films.
I'm going to interrupt you, Peter, for 1 second. I left one off. I so totally and Forbidden Planet. That was another one I just wanted to mention. If you're familiar with that.
Okay, yeah. So Forbidden Planet was my introduction to a kid's version of pornography. You know, it's not pornographic, but Anne Francis swimming around naked in the pool in Forbidden Planet. I don't know. What am I, 6 or 7 or something like that? But it certainly got my motor running, and that's about and Robbie the Robot. And I just love all the gizmos in Forbidden Planet because it was such a futuristic commercial bash, and didn't even have anything to do with. Well, I did have something to do with morality, but it was not sort of like the H.G. Wells or Philip Dick kind of social morality that they were teaching us. I love Forbidden Planet. Planet of the Apes, I was highly entertained by Planet of the Apes, and isn't Kim Hunter in that?
Absolutely.
Kim Hunter?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. From Studio Named Desire, yeah. And bless his heart, Charlton Heston, who Gore Vidal always said I resembled. Gore Vidal was one of my mentors in Italy, man, and he wrote my recommendation into grad school. One of the great men of letters in the United States. I didn't appreciate all of his political views, but man was a powerhouse of a mind and a huge inspiration to me. And he would call me Chuck. And I said, finally said, Gore, what are you doing? He says, well, sometimes you have this sort of this posture and this arrogance of Heston. I went, okay, I'll take that as a compliment. But but that guy, I just saw him again, not in Planet of the Apes, but I saw him in the last act of Ben-Hur. Terrific, man. So, he's like an entertainer. I can't. Right. And Dave the Earth is still a genius, of course. Yes. Then we get to Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy's in Invasion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know his daughter's one of the heads of TNT, hired me for Longmire, and Kevin McCarthy came to the Extra Studio a couple of times when I was doing an improv with Kazan. That movie. I mean, forget that Kevin McCarthy had an amazing theater career. I mean, I think he was in the original production of Death of a Salesman, a lot of other stuff, man. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers is like this. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers is like, okay, if Day the Earth Stood Still is gifted in its progression of entertainment into a moral, universal morality, the downside of that is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, man. I haven't seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 20 years, but all I know is it's indelible. It's still, the imprint is still on my head.
Now, that last scene when he's in the highway there yelling that they're after you and you're next, how do you forget that?
Yeah, I know. You can't forget it. But I'm trying to think of, what's the best sci-fi movie you've ever seen, man?
That's a good question.
Me, it's... I just remember as a kid seeing it, and still hits me today when I see it on TV, was Close Encounters. I don't know. Wow. There's something about it that really just blew me away. Maybe it was because the special effects at the time, hadn't really been done like that before, and the age I was when I saw it, but it always left a real impression on me.
How about that?
Wow. What about you, Doug?
I go with Forbidden Planet only because it had all the elements, and there was a little mystery there, and certainly it had the titillation of the short skirts. It had all the gadgets, as you say, but it also had what's this all about? Again, I saw it as a kid. What's the id? What's the ego? What's the super ego? So it sort of got me involved with, what? Again, from a child's perspective, there is more to this story than just the ray guns and what's going on here. And this monster was created by the inner person, and it just left me with questions of, as a younger person, what is the id, the illy, the ego, and it started me on an exploration that there can be more to a movie or any kind of entertainment than just the gadgets. Not to say that it was a big, huge message, but there was something going on behind the scenes. So as a younger person, that started me down to the idea that watching a movie for just what's on the screen and what's happening beyond is, that there could be a meaning to this movie. Had significance to me. If that makes sense.
That is the distinction between you and me, Douglas. You remember the Aesop's fable morality out of this thing of making up your own monsters. All I remember is Anne Francis naked swimming in the pool. But I think mine has to be when I'm kidding, because I didn't quite get it, because Forbidden Planet, that you can create this monster that's all in your sub, and this is all coming out, man. Because it was such a production. I don't know, it was in this division or whatever, man. It was such a production that I was just wowed by all the gadgets and things. But I think that my favorite sci-fi idiom is Philip K. Dick, and I got to do a really good version of a Philip K. Dick movie, but I think Blade Runner is my favorite. Blade Runner is really, it's essentially based on, the Confessions of Nat Turner, and I don't know if you ever read Styron's book, but, it's slavery, man. I mean, Nat Turner escapes and kills and is heading, and, imagine in the 1830s, they just, well, where's he going? I mean, what does he want? I mean, confuse people, man. Like, why would this guy leave, the protection of, the hypocrisy of slavery is not only just the slavery itself, it's like a horrific idiom that passed in the United States. But one of the cliches I did not like about Harriet, which I just saw, that performance was astounding, and Harriet Tubman is a giant of American history. But the movie was filled with cliches, and the reactionary South, the reactivated South will rise again, and why Lander was so beautiful in his speech about why those statues got to come down in New Orleans, is that during slavery, however, slaves, this is a general thing, this axiom of cliche of white put down of black people, the sadness was that they cultivated this sort of, social seduction of an entire cultural race of people who are coming out of Western Africa. So it wasn't all just the N-word and this and punishment and whatever, and that existed. It was like, we love you, we own you, we've taken care of you. The remarkable brainwash that the South had in slavery was that. Where would Nat Turner be going? Why would he leave here? And Blade Runner, just pierces me, because it's like, why would these guys who've got this perfect life that we invented for them, leave that planet and come here to kill? That theme, man, Philip K. Dick is dark. That's a dark dude, man.
Right. Speaking of dark dudes in science fiction, I feel like Darth Vader. We've got to take a break here. We'll be back right after this. Everything Old is New again. It's a shame as summer starts to fade, the outdoor barbecues with hot dogs and mustard get tucked away. But don't sweat it. Bowers is a mustard for all seasons. With a horseradish kick that continues the summer taste all year long. Spice up a leg of lamb, slather it on a steak, bake it in a brie, and of course, layer it on your favorite hot dog. In true everything old is new again style, we've found a mustard that tastes as new as when the first jar was produced by August Bauer in 1888. This creamy, addictive condiment could very well have been what your grandfather used at his barbecue. Bauer's has been delighting generations for 130 years. The best-kept secret in mustard is now out of the jar. Buy a jar online at abauersmustard.com. That's ABAUERS mustard.com. Or from your local store listed on their website. Again, abauersmustard.com. Bauer's Mustard, all natural, all authentic, always delicious, and recommended by all of us. And everything old is new again.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
I am returning Earth to human beings.
And the greatest threat of all,
Revolting human hybrid, the offspring of Commander Tucker and Commander DePaul,
is a little child.
You're going to kill her.
Robocop's Peter Weller guest stars.
She looks so innocent.
Star Trek Enterprise
Aha, welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. We're continuing to talk all things movies with Dr. Peter Weller, having some great time here. But that's some of the best science fiction is when it just takes you to another place where there are other possibilities, but it's grounded in a human question that is answered maybe differently in the science fiction, and maybe we should have done something differently now, or at least, to me, the best science fiction presents you with a question. It doesn't give you an answer. If that makes sense.
Well, okay, then you got to take the all-time one of all-time ones, and it's the only hit movie ever made with no particular Aristotelian beginning, middle, and end. I mean, you can find it is 2001. Now, right. I just watched on Turner Classic Movies 2001, the last act of it. You know, when he's out there and he kills Gary Lockwood, Hal kills Gary Lockwood, Chuduley's trying to get back in the spaceship. I watched it all the way to the end, and I'm thinking, and I tried to get my kid walk in there. He walked in, and it wasn't like, you know, the razzmatazz of science fiction that he likes. It's like these perfect symmetrical shots of Keir Dullea with the light effect on him, and you know, pulling out those like slow-mo cylinder or those tabs of Hal. But you know, an 8-year-old had no interest in it. To me, I watched that thing, you know, and and when it ended, Douglas, I have to say, I was bummed out because I felt like I've been living in a 6-week-old monolith. You know, I think that Hal is somehow running us right now. I don't know. But I think that is, okay, that's the masterpiece of science fiction of all time. There is no answer to that, man, right?
Correct.
Take your point. There's no ta-da, and they walk off into the sunset. That leaves you with a whole lot of questions.
It does.
Leaves you with a whole lot.
Yeah. And that's, I think, was the best, to me, the best part of sci-fi is that it's not the shoot 'em ups and all of the technology. So, all right, let me just do this. We're going to be back right after this Everything Old is New Again with Dr. Peter Weller, talk more movies, more art, and maybe a little bit about History Channel right now, right here on Everything Old is New Again.
It's been a long road, getting from there to here. It's been a long time. My time is flying. I will see my dream come alive at last. I will touch the sky.
There we go. Okay. I got
to take a quick pee break, guys. Sorry.
Go ahead.
In the last 20 minutes, I have to go.
We'll be here. I'm going to continue to start without you, David.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hi, this is Bob Breyer, and we're Everything Old is New Again with David Cohen and Douglas Viviani.
And we're back here with David Cohen and Douglas Viviani. Of course, Everything Old is New Again, but we're also with Dr. Peter Weller enjoying all kinds of topics. That is a gentleman that's been on our show a number of times talking about Egypt. He's a great Egyptologist and really made that subject come alive for us, Dr. Breyer. And I wanted to ask Dr. Weller a question about that, but wanted to just first introduce the idea that we're talking during the pandemic here, and we're trying to get some ideas as to some movies to watch, some virtual artwork to get involved with, and some things to keep the mind attuned here while we're waiting for the A-OK to get out and live our lives again. So, Dr. Weller, this gentleman, Dr. Breyer, is very into Egypt. He's a tremendous Egyptologist. He has about 3 or 4 books on it. He's claims to have a theory about how the pyramids were built, but more than that, he really knows Egypt in and out as a society, and is a lot of fun, brings it alive for the great courses, and that's how I got to learn him and others. Did you, in your idea of when you went for your PhD, did you have a choice of Egypt versus, up to World War II and whatever art there was as to get involved with a certain civilization? And I guess a better question is, what made you choose the Renaissance as your focus of your PhD?
Let me give a shout out to Dr. Bob Breyer, because that guy's a legend. Amazing. And I've been to Egypt twice on, archaeological and political tours with the History Channel and with the 1-year celebration of Obama's speech in Cairo when they reopened the Library of Alexandria, in a big bilateral sort of, or multilateral talk about American stereotypes in Muslim countries. And a friend, a longtime friend, and a guy who's like sort of segued me into a lot of places that even the History Channel couldn't get into, Zahi was. And Dr. Zahi, you gotta thank Dr. Zahi for resurrecting Egyptology in the world, man. Because, pardon me, because as gifted as Dr. Breyer is, and others, the access and the fascination, the interest, and so forth, just the commercial momentum of Egyptology, despite Arab Spring or whatever has happened in the Mediterranean, wouldn't be there without Zahi. And so Breyer's a gifted dude, man.
He was tremendous. If you feel like it, go back and listen to our show. Anybody can hear the old shows on everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz or.
I will, man.
Yeah, I mean, it just flows, and he was really, and he's got a great nature to him, just like yourself. He's very easygoing, but he sure knows his stuff, and he taught me a lot with this course. And you know what I love this in our fantasy. David and I were talking about these are our fantasies, and probably why Forbidden Planet has a different level for us, because we were thinking about what about Dr. Breyer debating Dr. Weller about which is the simple question, the best civilization, the Romans or the Egyptians. That would be our Super Bowl.
Look, man, Egypt influenced Greece for sure. Archaic sculpture, we know that, man. Greece influenced Rome, so you can't beat Egypt, man. You can't beat Egypt. I mean, the last time I was in Egypt, when I was there, I can say for the opening of the Library of Alexandria, there's in the Valley of the Queens, you can't get into this particular fresco cycle because you have to pay $25,000 because it's hermetically sealed and it's only about 5 feet long on both sides. And I don't know how old it is, 5,000 years, 4,000 years. And Zahi got us into it, and he just made the phone call. We went into it. So you look at that, you think, okay, everything comes from this, man. You could say the whole Judeo-Christian ethic comes from that. You could say Zoroaster comes from that. One God ideology comes from that. You could say reincarnation, or resurrection. The whole idea of resurrection comes from Egypt, right?
Exactly.
And I've got, speaking of Robocop, I would get in these conversations with Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven has a master's degree in medieval mythology, man. And we'd say, look, the Pharisees believed in resurrection, passes on to Christianity. By the way, people out there, like when I had to study how the Bible became a book, there's a great teacher, both Jewish and Christian, would say when the Christian students and the Jewish students and the Islamic students would stand up and say, well, what if my imam, my priest or whatever, and they go, listen, not talking about that, not having a rabbinical debate here, talking about archaeology, okay? How the thing happened. So take that out of it. So when you say the belief in resurrection is inherited by the Pharisees. The Essenes and the didn't believe in it, but that comes from Egypt. There's so many things from Egypt. I can't even debate Dr. Breyer. I can't even go there, man. I can talk about, look, how I got into it. I didn't get into it through Egypt. I got into it. I was living in Europe with a father who was fascinated with history, and everybody's an intellectual in my family. I was playing catch-up ball. My brother was a savant. My father was a savant. Everybody could read 5 books in a second. My father turned me on to Robert Graves, the Greek myths, and so forth, the Roman myths. That was great. Ali McGraw, bless her heart, who I mentioned before to you, was the seminal person. People know those about Ali McGraw. Yeah, she was a great model and an actress. But Ali McGraw was a gifted student at Wellesley in design and art. And Diana Vreeland, the head of style at Vogue, would take one of these girls every year from these universities, these Ivy League women's universities, and groomed them to become a fashion stylist. And Sylvia Plath, the great poet, was one of them. And there were several of us. Allie was that. So when I started running with Allie after this movie, we made the movie, and then I was going out with someone for a second, a ballet dancer, and then she invited me to Sweeney Todd. And she said, come to this party. I was going out to parties with painters. I don't know these people. I know who they were. I didn't know who Robert Rauschenberg was, or these people. I could tell Warhol because he had weird hair or something like that. You'll later take my photograph 8 times, and I don't have one copy of that. But, we'd sit with Clinton and Mailer and on, man, and Halston and Truman Capote and Betty Friedan, for crying out loud, man. Spinem, Erica Jong. I mean, not to mention the painters again, the Met Ball, and all of the plunk down next to Alvin Ailey and Martha Graham. What am I supposed to say? You know, my mother read it in a newspaper. She says, I didn't know Allie was that person. That's Allie's cachet. Allie's cachet in New York. Her roommate, next door neighbor was Diane Arbus. So Allie's access to New York was through her cachet as a photographer stylist, right? And she put on a bikini once, and the rest is history. But what her intelligence is astounding. And she told me, my mother said to me, like I said, my mother was loud. So, she read it in New York Post of hanging out with Allie. What's that like? I said, I don't know. I'm with all these literati, these really intelligent people, man. I was at a dinner last night with Norman Mailer, and I wanted to say something to Betty Friedan. I don't know what to say to these people. And my mother said, well, don't say anything. Just shut up and listen. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a slap in the face. So I shut up and listen.
Unfortunately, we're out of time again here with Dr. Peter Weller. We will be back next week on Everything Old is New Again to continue talking with Dr. Weller. Thank you so much for your time.